Welcome everyone. I'm Claire Alanadi, the Global Marketing Director at ILUS International, and I'm here with John Paul Backwell, the Managing Director of ILUS. This is our second Q&A. We did promise that we'd do more of these, and the last one was very well received. So here we are again. As we have got the first shareholder meetup next month, we thought there may be some questions prior to that. So that's why I wanted to do one for you this month. And thank you very much to the Discord for sending through a whole mixture of topics as usual. So JP, you've got quite a few to look forward to today.
Yeah, hi everybody, and thank you for joining us. Looking forward to this Q&A. I believe there's 21 odd questions, and I've seen about the first 6 or 7. So looking forward to what lies ahead. I think just also to say, since the last Q&A, we've completed a huge amount. We've delivered a huge amount. I think many of you would have seen that. We've also completed the pre-contract agreements on 3 acquisitions, which will add an additional 12 million in revenue to our books, and that's before we add any additional growth to them. We closed out our third quarter very strongly. Our revenues were up, our profits were up. So we've really come a long way since the last Q&A. We now have an even richer acquisition pipeline. We're beginning our US manufacturing, which is also very exciting. There's also some very significant orders in our sales pipeline. And Nick is in Europe at the moment working on a major European deal. So there's a huge amount going on. I'm in the UK working on an acquisition before heading back to the US to work on a few more. And our due diligence teams are working on multiple deals at the moment. So yeah, as I said, lots of exciting stuff going on. Looking forward to the Q&A.
Me too. Let's get cracking. Okay, so we start off with a really good question. In America, there is a concept of surround and drown for building fires. Does your nozzle, when need be, put out the same or similar coverage of water output, or is the nozzle more for up-close firefighting?
Good question. So in short, the short answer is yes, but we have multiple versions of nozzles. So if you go straight to the higher end, which is where we have that coverage that's being referred to here, our selectable flow nozzle can put out as much as 200 gallons per minute. So that's comparable with your top of the range TFT nozzles, Acron nozzles, Eckhart brass nozzles. Any firefighters listening to this will know those brands and will know approximately what their flow rates are. We obviously have the smaller mini nozzle down at the bottom. Don't want to say the bottom end because there's a very specific application, but that mini nozzle has a maximum flow rate in jet mode of only 15 gallons per minute. And that's used mostly to douse down after a fire has been extinguished. And that normally is used on the Mistmaxes and our smaller portable pump units. Then you've got the Maxi nozzle, which has a jet mode and a mist mode. And that one is typically used on fire trucks. It's got a max flow rate there of 60 gallons per minute. And that can be used on lay flat hose or standard hose reels in the UK. Lay flat's obviously far more prominent in the US. And then it goes up to that selectable flow nozzle, which has got a mist mode, a fog mode, and then multiple selectable flow rates. I think starting at around about 60 gallons per minute and going up to 200 gallons per minute. So obviously the firefighters can click as they want to go up, or they can go straight to the max flow rates if they want. It's the only nozzle of its type in the world that has mist, fog, and jet with multiple different flow rates. So I think that more than covers that one.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, ours use a lot less water than your traditional. So
yeah, of course. In mist mode, up to 80% less water. You know, it depending on the firefighter and the fire that's being fought, it could be even significantly more than that. So as little as, we've seen 6-7 liters or liters. I don't know what the gallons. I think it's about a gallon and a half of water being used to put out a car fire.
Yeah, it's incredible. Thank you. Question: how are you engaging the California fire groups to get your product into their hands for forest fires?
That's a very good question. The wildfires in particular have caused a massive amount of devastation in that region, as well as a number of other states in the US, a number of other countries across the world, particularly in Europe recently as well. So we are talking to companies that are already selling into that space in California. And they are already talking to the fire brigades about our technology and what it can do to assist them and the communities that are being impacted. We're also in discussions regarding acquiring some of these companies that sell into the space. And so I think within that, I hope that people can see the bigger picture about what we're doing in the US, because it is so much greater than just talking to the individual fire brigades, although that is something that we do, and it is something that's very, very important. When we spoke the other day about dominating the US firefighting equipment market within 12 to 24 months, that wasn't just a fluff tweet. That literally is something that really is underway. We're in the process of acquiring multiple companies that sell to the fire brigades so that they can sell our existing technology and the technology from the other acquisitions. Okay. At the end of the day, which is easier, to onboard these companies as distributors, and then you've got to motivate them, you've got to incentivize them, you've got to train them, you've got to constantly push them to sell your own products? Or do you just acquire them and tell them which products they'll focus on selling and bring your own aggressive sales strategy into those acquisitions? The latter is what we believe is the smartest route. And so that's what we're doing. And I'll elaborate further on that in another video, and how that equates to us in a fairly short space of time dominating the US market. But also to say that our Georgian acquisition is already selling to fire brigades all over California, their pumps, their rescue equipment, their technical rescue equipment, their tools, so much more. Our Tennessee acquisition is also selling wildfire brush trucks to customers in California. There's actually one on their order book right at this moment. I've seen it. So in addition to all the acquisitions, we're also going to grow through our distribution hub on the West Coast. We've talked about that previously. We'll also have one on the East Coast and things like that. So I think that answers that one sufficiently.
It does indeed. Thank you. Okay, question 3. How are you getting into the East Coast firefighting groups, and how do you change the way that they fight fires? As a subculture, East Coast firefighters are ultra-traditionalists and use the same methods they have for hundreds of years. For example, fire helmets are very much laughed at on the East Coast, even though they are safer.
Yeah, we know that to be true. We're already engaging with members of the New York Fire Department to better understand those subcultures that exist on the East Coast. I know that the NYFD is not everything on the East Coast, but from our perspective, it's been a good place to start whilst we've been there. We've obviously already seen a great deal of interest in our technology, especially for the fighting of kitchen fires and electric vehicle fires. So this again, though, is where our acquisition strategy is so vital, because when we acquire companies that sell to these firefighting groups, they already have existing or retired firefighters who understand the culture and the buying requirements. They've got the relationships already in place. So that's why that strategy is so hugely important. We can go in all bullheaded and think we're going to do this all ourselves, and we have all the knowledge and we know exactly what it takes to succeed in each of those different subcultures. But the reality is we don't. We're not going to pretend that we do. We know that other people are far more experts than we are, and we look to work with them and partner with them, and obviously they see the benefit of our technology and they want to push it into those various markets, or in this case into these different groups. And that's exactly what we're doing. It's also worth adding to that, though, that we are appointing members to our board of directors who've got extensive industry experience, actual firefighting industry experience. They've sold large firefighting equipment companies before. They've acquired large firefighting equipment companies before. And so they know the US industry like the back of their hand. So we'll also know which companies we can go after and which will complement our strategy best, and which will have all those important relationships in place for each particular firefighting group and each different subculture, because they are very territorial and things like that in the US. And so that's how we're going about things. We think it's, as I said in the previous question, a fairly smart way of doing things. We're certainly seeing a huge amount of progress doing things that way, and we'll just continue to do that.
Excellent. Okay, this next question is a little vague, so here it goes. Has ILUS investigated selling or buying other products to get their foot in the door?
Yes, we certainly have. We're obviously doing that already. I think that's evident by the acquisitions we've been busy with. It will be even more evident by the acquisitions we make over the next couple of weeks, months, and even beyond NASDAQ. As a mergers and acquisitions company, as I've said many times, that's what we do and what we'll continue to do. But of course, the strategy behind what we do is evident. It's evident that we're purchasing companies which already have their feet in the door, selling their own current range of products, and we're using that, we're leveraging that to bring in our Firebug products and other new products that we'll be bringing to market. Those companies now and in future have got experienced, retired firefighters or retained firefighters, volunteer firefighters. We're leveraging those relationships to obviously take our products to their customers, their existing customers. So I think that explains it. And as I said, that's just going to ramp up even more as we grow into this acquisition strategy that's unfolding.
Yeah, it sure is. Brilliant. Thank you. Question 5. Have there been any discussions regarding portions of sales of certain merchandise going to support charities to include wildland firefighter charities? I think you have an opportunity here to not only support them with new tech, but support them through charity. Great question. Thank you, whoever asked that one from the Discord. We've definitely discussed this recently, haven't we?
Yeah, it's certainly something we're going to do. We've not yet determined the exact percentage of sales. People need to bear in mind that it's high-end merchandise. We're basically selling it at cost price. So we do hope to put around 5% towards providing firefighting equipment to volunteer firefighting groups, of which there's many that we've dealt with already. It's something we're passionate about. We know there's a huge need for it. It's why the ILUS coin exists as well. But hopefully there can be a partnership between us and the customer, Claire, and I think that's something you'll be working out, right? Again, I mentioned the ILUS coin. We have a similar focus with the ILUS coin, which is primarily for the purpose of enabling firefighting groups to acquire firefighting equipment, which they normally wouldn't have the upfront capital to acquire. And through the ILUS coin community, these groups can obtain a leasing contract for their much needed equipment. So I'm just mentioning that because in addition to the merchandise, the ILUS coin is another way to get involved with having a positive impact on the global firefighting community, and you can make some money at the same time. But yes, it's always been on the cards for us to put a percentage of those sales towards a very, very, very worthwhile charitable cause. And just to clarify regarding the merchandise, we only showed a few of the designs in our tweets, and there's plenty more designs. So for those who honed in on how much they didn't like the billionaire in the making t-shirts, for example, they might have seen that there were other designs which were simpler and some might say more professional, in my opinion. I also like the simpler designs, and I know that they're much more professional. Bear in mind, at the time that we said we would launch merchandise, we took into account the many recommendations that were given to us by shareholders, and those came in on email, and some were on Twitter and other forums. So we took all those recommendations into account. And as I said, those ideas were largely given to us by shareholders themselves. So, there will be merchandise focusing on the life-saving capability of our technology, on the water-saving capability, and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, when all's said and done, if you don't like a design, you don't have to buy it. And, we're taking that feedback into account. It is important to us. And of course, the designs will reflect that. Great that they'll be obviously contributing to very good causes like volunteer firefighting equipment and other possible causes down the line as well.
Okay, I did say we had a variety of questions, so here we go. I have noticed many long-term shareholders are overly emotional when it comes to the day-to-day price action of the ILUS stock. I compare their memories to that of a goldfish. Is there anything you might say to them specifically that could keep them remaining optimistic on the red days or red weeks?
Well, whoever supplied that question mentioned the word goldfish and not me, so just want to clarify that. Look, I'd say we've been here before, Claire. We've had red days, we've had multiple red days, we've had red weeks, multiple red weeks. And back at that time, it didn't really matter what we said. The majority of the comments would be negative. So, you'll remember that was roughly when you joined, and you must have been thinking, what the hell have I gotten myself into here? Now, at times, it's a similar thing, although we have the benefits of having proven that we do deliver and will continue to deliver. But that's how it is. on the OTC. You can acquire a significant company with customers like Shell and BP and $8 million in annual revenue, and then you can still have a red day. And on that day, people will still say, who cares about that? Give us the SS updates. We have these additional 3 new acquisitions that we're completing that will bring in an additional 12 million in revenue. As I mentioned, that's before we even add any additional growth to them. And then, people will still say, well, give us your third quarter figures. Despite us having shown those earnings or given a high level view of those earnings, it's pretty darn easy to work out very closely what those are. And we've said that our filings take place on the 15th of November, and that's the earliest date that we can release the full figures. And there's just so much stuff going on a daily basis, amazing things going on in the life of ILUS. We just don't have the time to always update on it. BCD Fire and Bullhead Products are working on really, really huge orders. Our distributor in Georgia hit its annual targets with more than 2 months to spare. So there's a lot of things which we're just ticking off boxes as we go. We're going to be acquiring multiple companies leading up to our annual shareholder meeting and then our NASDAQ uplist, and that's just going to continue well beyond. So I'm not sure if people felt that there would be a slowdown in news leading up to the shareholder meeting now that we've been making those acquisitions in the US, which we spoke about, and they're not sure what the roadmap is beyond now and NASDAQ. But from our perspective, we're really only getting into our stride. We're getting better at what we do all the time, more efficient as we add more staff, and those staff learn the business, and our efficiency is just increasing all the time. There's plenty more to come. As we've mentioned, we're busy with due diligence on a company that's got revenues in excess of $100 million annual revenues, and that forms part of our NASDAQ uplist plans. I'm more excited personally than ever. We've made multiple acquisitions in the 10 months that we've been going already. We'll have made more by the end of our first year, by 12 months. Our revenue's been up, our profit has been up every single quarter. We're well on track to hit our annual target for the year. In the end of the day, what more could you ask for from a company? So, look, to answer the question, I do hope that people find this all cause for great optimism. We've delivered, and we are delivering on all of our stated goals when it comes to growing the business. Yes, we might have been a day or 2 late here and there in terms of an announcement, but those who have actually run multiple businesses will understand why that can happen. I mean, it only takes one accountant to have COVID, to get COVID, to throw you off a day or 2. And at the end of the day, we are delivering, and we are achieving real world revenue with technology that is saving lives, and it's making a real impact. And we're doing this whilst other OTC companies are still, fudging around trying to get their concepts off the ground and get them approved. So, when you think about it, that's why we're so passionate. That's why we've got such a passionate team. It's why we've got such a passionate group of long-term shareholders. There's people who see what we're doing, they understand it, and they believe in it. And then on the flip side, you've got that short-term mentality that does exist, and it will always exist. We know where we're headed. We know we're achieving great success. And those who really know what we're about will be loving this journey with us. So, yeah.
I couldn't agree with you more. We knew that a question would come up about the share structure update, so here it is. Could you provide an update on what the status of the share structure update is? As of July, it was seemingly close to completion. I know that this has been brought up several times in the past, but there have been multiple self-created timelines for the completion of the SS update that have not been met due to various reasons. I think shareholders would appreciate if you would explain in a little more detail exactly where the SS update stands now and what are the last obstacles to completing the entire plan.
All right, good. So we've got the SS reduced down to close to 1 billion shares. That's where it is right now. The conversion of Nick's shares from common to preference is almost completed. There's also some other conversions taking place along the same lines. So many will have also seen that the court action is underway for the cancellation of the 40 million shares. We couldn't find that company anywhere, despite even having appointed a private investigator to do so. The recent news you would have seen is that the court granted us approval to advertise and try to locate that company in the area where they are supposed to exist. So we're just going through that formality. We know that those 40 million shares will be cancelled. The main point, I guess, is that they're not going to be converted and they're not going to be sold. So I'm not sure why people are so worried about them. and they certainly don't need to be. And no, we're not going to wait for those 40 million shares before we update the SS either. There's just some other actions which are underway where our attorneys are working to bring that SS perhaps down to right on 1 million or even a little bit under. And part of the whole delay relates to that GPL saga. We mentioned it in a previous video, in a previous letter. And that is what originally delayed us from that time frame where we communicated a week and then possibly another week. And I know that that's incredibly frustrating for people as it is with us. No one could have foreseen that GPL saga or GPL issue taking place. And that's really what's been the cause of delays for quite some time. And as I said, it's going to be reduced to in the region of 1 billion shares, and we'll continue to cleanse it, so to speak, and get it down below. And then, once we're satisfied, we'll obviously release that SS update. But I guess that links into the question above, because when our share price was going up, everyone was very positive. We didn't hear much about that SS update. And, at the moment, there's a couple of red days. All we hear is that whole SS updates thing again. It's not that it's not important to us. We're busy with it. We've got attorneys working on it full time. It is important, but it's nowhere near as important as the fundamentals of our business, the growth that we're delivering, and all the other results that we're achieving and will continue to achieve. There's a lot of people that will regret having sold their shares back when it was down at 3 or 4 cents, right? The same will happen. And this process will continue to repeat itself because there will always be people with that short-term mentality. There will always be those retail investors that want really short-term gains. And those short-term gains will never be anywhere near what those long-term gains will be. It's just the way our business is headed. If the share price, as I always say, has got anything to do with the real value of our company in terms of what we're actually delivering, then it will continue to go up and go up and go up.
Okay, I hope that gives some clarity on that question. I love when we get a direct question. Is it likely ILUS closes on the Florida acquisition and the astronomical European acquisition before the end of Q4?
Very direct. Florida, yes. Other acquisitions, yes. The European deal is a difficult one to answer. I can say that there'll be 2 phases to the European deal. It's obviously a huge deal. There's a lot of politicians involved, and that's why it takes time, and that's why Nick has been over there so many times. That's why he's over there right now with actually a whole team of people. It's not just him. The company we're taking over manufactures fire vehicles and military vehicles, and that's important to note because that means that we're dealing with multiple government departments, the Ministry of Defense, the Ministry of Finance. There's also state secrets involved, and obviously that will amount to some delays. Not delays, but just the whole process takes time. There's just so many working parts involved in the deal. There's over 1,500 staff on the current payroll. That acquisition is so large that the actual manufacturing facility sustains an entire European town. So, yeah, as I said, 2 phases. There'll be an interim part to the deal, which we should be able to announce somewhere in November, and that will involve our ERAPTOR manufacturing and the manufacturing of some of our current firefighting vehicles. The larger portion of the deal, not that the first part of it is going to be small by any means, but the larger portion of the deal will take a bit longer. Bear in mind, all those working parts that I've already mentioned. So that's second part of it, probably timeframes. I mean, it'll be early next year, the second part of the deal. Just also to mention, this acquisition is not the 9-figure revenue acquisition that we've mentioned previously. So that's important. It's also not linked to Milk Holdings or anything like that, because there's been some speculation about that. That's a separate deal that's going on, and it's why one of the reasons why we talk about we're working on multiple large deals. The EU deal is just one, and yeah, I think that's pretty much all I can say on that one.
Thank you. I think it helps to understand the 2 phases, just to give people extra information as to why that's not completed yet.
Yeah.
We haven't heard anything recently regarding Mulk. Can you provide any further information regarding a potential partnership and or business relationship? So that is Mulk Holdings, just to clarify.
Yeah, there's still some very exciting things underway with Mulk Holdings. It's not the European deal, as I mentioned already. It's also not the nine-figure revenue deal. It is another deal. It is a very significant deal. And Nick is still working closely with the guys at Mulk. I also have discussions with them. We've just not said anything publicly on it because we're not at liberty to do so. That's really it. We're incredibly busy. It's something that's going through the process that it needs to go through. And obviously we'll speak more about it when we can.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. All right, I've got a great question here. What would be the barriers to entry for BCD Fire to other markets outside of UAE? Installing fire systems in Burj 2020 is pretty good on the BCD resume, but I'm sure even slight differences in fire codes between countries can make licensing for building installs difficult. It would be great if we could get a game plan on potential international expansion if there is one.
Yeah, there would be barriers to entry to markets outside the GCC or outside the Middle East, not outside the UAE. BCD is already, bidding on projects in Saudi Arabia, in Bahrain, in Qatar. So there'd be barriers to entry to Europe, for example, because of standards, to the US, for example, because of standards. It's exactly why we're acquiring companies across the world. We'll be acquiring a company very soon in the US, which does exactly what BCD does. BCD, for those who don't know, sells and installs fixed firefighting systems, primarily in commercial buildings, also in some residential buildings and things like that. So fixed firefighting systems for kitchen fires, fire alarm systems in buildings, fire extinguisher systems, maintenance, all that kind of thing. So people will see it unveil itself with an acquisition in Florida. There'll be other acquisitions that will take place across the US, across Europe, across the UK. That's our strategy. I think that's fairly clear. We're going to be acquiring multiple companies in the spaces in which we operate, and so the same will apply here. And as I said, BCD themselves will continue to expand across the Middle East. I mean, right now they're operating across the UAE. There's multiple Emirates. There's 12 Emirates in the UAE: Sharjah, Ras Al Khaimah, Abu Dhabi, etc. We're pushing out of Dubai into those other Emirates, quoting on a number of different projects and things like that. But that strategy is very clear. We're targeting multiple acquisitions, and we're busy with multiple acquisitions.
Always busy with acquisitions. Great, that answers that one. Next question. Board of directors can play a significant role in a company. When do you expect the new board of directors to be announced, and how do you see the new board of directors' compensation and direction for the company?
So we're going to be making multiple appointments to the board over the next few weeks and months. And each time that we make an appointment, we'll release a PR accordingly. So people can just look out for those press releases. In terms of the type of people that we'll be appointing to the board, because we have been having discussions with all of them already, there will be some who have taken companies to NASDAQ along the same route that we are following and will be following. There will also be those who are experienced firefighters and have experienced huge success in the industry in the US and globally. And, they'll be guiding us in terms of the really large number of acquisitions we're going to be making. And these are people that have sold companies for huge amounts of money. They've been involved in acquisitions and things like that, but also know the industry like the back of their hand. So they're very unique individuals, and they'll definitely complement our board very, very well. We do hope to have the full board in place by very early next year, and some will obviously be in place by the annual shareholders meeting. But obviously, these are very busy people. We're very busy. it is a priority, but I wouldn't say it's at the top of our list in terms of priority. It's just something that we're busy with whilst we're traveling. We have meetings and things like that with these people when we can. The compensation for these board members free. I don't know why anyone assumed we would pay them anything. No, it'll obviously be preference shares. So for those who don't know, that's shares that they will only be able to sell after a year or more. So that's the non-exec positions. Then there's full-time board member appointments that we're going to be making, like the CFO position that we're advertising for this week, or start advertising for this week. And then there's a number of other C-level positions we are going to be advertising for very, very soon. And all these will be NASDAQ level positions with their compensation structured accordingly. So that answers that.
Thank you very much. Has ILUS considered bidding for contracts or otherwise participating in the Saudi NEOM Super City project through BCD for fixed systems in buildings and or through Firebug for mobile emergency services? Or are you actively bidding on some of these jobs?
Yes. Next question. Let me elaborate on that. We certainly have been bidding. And for those who don't know, NEOM, or that NEOM Super City project, is a $500 billion sustainable city that's being built in Saudi Arabia. It's right down our alley in terms of the technology we already have. So both BCD and Firebug and even TVC have been quoting on multiple projects there. The E-Raptors with our Mismaxes for small mobile firefighting systems, the ambulances from TVC and BCD for a number of those commercial buildings has been involved bidding and working its way in on various things. We've known about the NEOM project for some time now, so we've got contacts there and a distributor there and things like that as well. Just in that whole region, there's some other things going on there, just to add to that, which are interesting. The Qatar football or soccer World Cup for the Americans, and that's coming up fairly soon as well. We've been putting in bids for a number of vehicles and systems there as well, and there's some other big projects also going on in the Middle East, very much like that. I mean, there's the Middle East, they're always trying to show, each country is trying to show the other ones up. So Qatar is competing with the UAE, Saudi's competing with the UAE. They want taller buildings, better buildings, more glitz, more glam, and that plays, as I said, it's right down our alley in terms of the technology we have, because not only is our technology incredibly functional, we can also make it look really cool, and they tend to enjoy that. So there's a lot of potential for us. There's a lot that the sales teams are working on. I didn't actually mention we're also adding an additional 2 salespeople, one to Firebug and one to TVC in Dubai. Pretty much Jason has just landed in Dubai from the US yesterday, and he's busy just onboarding those guys as we speak. My phone doesn't stop ringing, as with Jason trying to call me. So yeah, good stuff going on all around.
Yeah, as we've said before, never a dull day at ILUS, is there? So
for sure.
That's great. Can you please provide a status update for the audit? From what I understand, the company name change cannot be official until the audit is complete.
Yeah, the name change can only take place after we file the Form 10, and that's obviously a huge priority for us. We, of course, don't want to be called Illustrator Pictures International much longer, do we, Claire? I don't think anyone does. So we cannot file that Form 10 until the audit is complete. And I think many people will know that the previous record keeping under the previous management, which we took over the company from in January of this year, well, that just wasn't great. It was quite messy. So we're going through that process of cleaning that all up, so that we can then get the audit completed. Once that's completed, we can then file the Form 10 and happy days, move over to ILUS International. And from our perspective, that really couldn't happen any sooner. We've got great things to report in terms of an audit. We'd love to get that done as soon as possible, but unfortunately, that audit goes back beyond when we took over. So we're just cleaning those things up, and I think people should be able to understand that.
Sure, that makes sense. Now, we like a challenge, but I'm not sure how much you're going to be able to answer this one. Regarding the talk of potential spin-offs, there has been speculation of spin-offs taking place prior to NASDAQ uplist. Is that less likely or more likely post-uplist?
It's a difficult one to answer because I'm not really at liberty to answer that, really. I think what I can say is we're getting the structure of the company optimal for the uplist. That's really what we're busy with. We're still looking at putting good quality assets into ILUS, which is why the acquisitions will continue to happen at a rapid pace leading up to the uplist. So the current ILUS, as we know it, will continue to grow, and it's going to become a monster conglomerate in the future. So maybe if you Google the word conglomerate, that will explain very much what we're doing. Based on the way we're structuring it, if there was a spin-off to take place, it would take place at the same time as the uplist. But, again, that's really as much as I can say. I think the key thing to note there is that we are constantly looking for and adding good quality assets into ILUS. So that's going to continue to happen in the short-term future, medium-term future, and that will continue to happen beyond the uplist. And I think that's key for some people to understand. It's also important to realize that we're structuring this deal in the most optimal way for the shareholders to benefit. So adding the best quality assets that we can, that's why all these acquisitions continue to take place. I mean, there's multiple reasons for that, but it's another reason we're adding really good quality assets to ILUS. And the other side of it is we're structuring this deal so that the shareholders benefit hugely from it.
Perfect. Thank you. There is a large issue of houses burning down during forest fires and insurance not wanting to insure them. People are forced to buy sprinkler systems for inside and outside their homes to protect them. Is ILUS looking into creating systems like this, especially in areas like California and Greece, where they are drought prone and 60% less water could be a huge problem saver? Brilliant question.
Very good. Yeah, we've actually already created a system specifically for residential homes, a water mist sprinkler type system. We installed it at quite a large project in Dubai. It was a very upmarket project. It was a pump-driven water mist sprinkler system for each individual home. So we've got the technology. We actually have a number of those systems also sitting in our factory in Dubai. I think it's one thing having the technology, it's another thing rolling it out. The way to roll it out is to roll it out through all of the acquisitions, through all of the companies that install these systems in people's homes, and more importantly, are in a position to work with the individual insurers and to get them standardized. When I'm talking insurance agencies, for example, in the US, and then in Europe, in the UK, et cetera, because each of them will have different standards. And so, again, this goes back to that tweet when we talk about things like dominating the US markets. The way we are doing that is we're going to buy up all of these different companies that install these types of systems. So yes, firefighting equipment on one side of it, all the companies that are supplying the fire brigades, not all, but a large majority. And I can explain how that strategy works so well for us at such a time as this. And then we'll do the same thing in the fixed system industry. And of course, a huge part of that is working with insurers, getting them to standardize and specify our equipment so that it needs to go in every single home in a community or in a state or in a county if you're in the UK, et cetera, et cetera. So that's our strategy. I think that's pretty clear. Why is it possible to make that strategy happen? And why do we believe we'll be so successful at it? I think what people need to understand is a lot of these companies that we are buying up and going to be buying up are typically run by, individuals. They're typically family-run businesses, and they're run by individuals that are looking to retire. And that's just the nature of the industry. The younger generation that's growing up are typically involved in, I don't know if they're not involved in cryptocurrency or something like that. They typically looking at cooler types of technology. They're getting involved in other things. They're running their own business, and typically they're not firefighting equipment businesses. Typically they're not fixed firefighting system businesses. So we come along and we see that these owners are looking to retire, they're looking to sell their businesses, and of course we can get some really good deals for these businesses, and that's why we want to acquire all of these municipal suppliers, all of these fire brigade suppliers, etc., and just do that. And it's why it's a fairly straightforward thing for us to be able to do it at the moment, because the need for the technology is not going away. It's just that there's not a lot of buyers out there for the technology, because there's no companies like ours that exist. There's not another public company that operates in the way that we do in the emergency response space. And I think people understand that the entire picture, they'll start to see why we're doing what we're doing and why it's so important to do what we're doing, and why we know we can be so successful and really dominate the industry in doing it. Again, I've digressed slightly away from that question, but that will show how we can expand, so widely into all these different markets.
Brilliant. That's very useful to add on. Thanks a lot. Would ILUS ever consider a buyback program or pay a small percentage to an investor to buy and hold shares at, let's say, a 10% discount for a year, like some companies do? And to follow up on this question, does ILUS own any outstanding shares?
So for the first part, the simple answer is yes on the discount for long-held shares. And that's something that we've been toying with and thinking about for a while. Nick and I have been talking about it for some time. What we've been doing is watching what some other companies have done in this regard, and they've done it with relative success. We've been waiting to see what happens when those shares come to the point where they can be sold, and what the shareholders then do with them. It does look, though, that if the fundamentals of the business are strong, shareholders tend to still hold on to those shares. And we know that the fundamentals are very strong with ILUS. So this is certainly something we're considering doing, and we'll probably look to do in the near future. Regarding the buyback, I would say it's always a contentious topic. Because a company should probably be spending its cash on growing and creating long-term value with strong fundamentals and acquiring really good assets that yield a really good return, rather than spending it on a buyback, especially a mergers and acquisitions company, right? I mean, we should typically be focusing our cash into acquisitions. And unless a company is so awash with capital and nothing to spend it on, buybacks in the OTC, I think they usually hurt the investors long term. When cash is spent with no assets bought, the price might rise, but ultimately the retail investors are going to sell at a profit anyway, and then the price is going to return to where it was. And investors work out that there probably isn't much on the horizon. And that's certainly not the case with us, right? So people need to understand as well that early stage companies typically come to the OTC, they come to the public markets to raise capital by selling stock, and not raise capital and then give it back. So they use that capital to acquire assets typically, or invest in the growth of their business. However, we're not saying no, we're just saying there's a time and a place for it, and we certainly don't rule it out. I think, as we always say, our focus right now is in investing on top quality assets and creating maximum value. And that's part of our clear-cut strategy that will take us to NASDAQ. And then, in terms of the outstanding shares, ILUS owns all of its outstanding shares, but it can't trade its own shares. So I'm not really sure what that question means. Do they perhaps mean authorized shares? ILUS could buy shares back and put them to treasury so that they're not outstanding and they just become authorized. But again, for me to answer that question properly, I would need more clarity on whether they mean outstanding or authorized, or perhaps the Discord can explain exactly what they mean, and I'll be happy to answer that question another time.
Yeah, we'll find out in a bit more detail. Just to add to what you said, ultimately, we always say we do whatever we can to add shareholder value, don't we? So that's why these things are always revisited, just to see if we're doing what's best for the company and for our shareholders.
100% right, and that's why we do think these things through. We consider every option, And we're looking and we're saying, is this going to grow our company? Is it going to add value to the shareholders? If it ticks both of those boxes, we'll certainly be considering it and possibly pushing forward with it.
Absolutely. Okay, what can we expect at the 2 shareholder events prior to the shareholders meeting? That is what will be on the agenda for these events. So that will be the 2 meetups in November in New York and Las Vegas, won't it?
Really? I wasn't aware of those.
Just clarifying.
You'll be doing a presentation? You're aware of that?
Yes, correct.
I will be doing a presentation. I'll be doing a presentation. Nick will be doing a presentation. We'll obviously be giving feedback on what we've done so far. We'll be talking about our roadmap. Obviously, there's going to be some announcements. That's just the nature of our business. There's always new good things to talk about. So that will be happening then. The annual shareholder meeting is more of a forum where we'll talk about the really big chunky things like the NASDAQ uplist plans. There's obviously some formalities that need to take place in that event at the annual shareholders meeting. The annual shareholders meeting will be possible to attend virtually. Obviously, we want as many shareholders as possible to be a part of that. The meetups were primarily arranged as an opportunity for us to meet shareholders, for shareholders to meet us, and of course, announcements, discussions, things like the roadmap, and that are really a byproduct of those events, being able to meet them and them to meet us.
Great. And yeah, just separately, we will be releasing the final details for those 2 events very soon. We've been counting up the final numbers this week, haven't we? Whilst everyone was letting us know which ones they wanted to go to. So do expect to hear from us very soon. And that won't just be on social media. If you have given us an email address, then we will be contacting you via email as well. Okay, another direct question for us. Any updates on the progress of the EU deal that you can share? I know we have covered this in some aspects already.
Yeah, we have. It's exactly as I mentioned in terms of those 2 phases. So if you haven't listened to that, then just rewind a bit and you'll get the feedback on that. It is an astronomical deal. I'm not sure if astronomical is a popular or well-known term across in the US, but I don't know, massive, extraordinary. Google synonyms for astronomical. It'll be any one of those. It's a large manufacturing facility that currently manufactures primarily military vehicles. It's huge. It's well known across Europe and most parts of the world. So we're obviously acquiring that in a privatization deal from the government. It's linked to contracts. Nick actually just messaged me like a couple seconds ago, really, telling me that he had really positive discussions around the whole contract side of things. So that's good, but that's also why it takes a bit longer for that second phase that I mentioned, because of those contracts. The factory itself, I say it's more than a factory, but the factory itself supplies pretty much most of Europe, a lot of markets that we really want to break into, a lot of markets where there's huge need at the moment to move to Euro 6 emission vehicles and things like that. We've spoken about that before in previous kind of shareholder update letters and things like that, PRs and the likes. So that's still playing out. We're making really good progress. The feedback I've got now just this week is everything's in place and all of that. So it'll still be in those 2 phases though. And as I said, the huge portion of it will complete early next year.
Brilliant. We've got an open-ended question here. What is something you are currently excited about, ILUS related, that you can share with us right now?
Yeah, I'm probably most excited about what's on my desk at the moment, and that's this UK acquisition that we're working on. I think we've not spoken too much about it. We've just been so busy with things over in the US, but it's a very, I guess, underrated acquisition. I think if people knew more about it, they would also be incredibly excited about it. But it's actually a group of 4 companies, and they couldn't be more well aligned with us in terms of what we're trying to achieve. So one of those companies is a CNC manufacturing business with multiple contracts in place. Then there is a plastic vehicle body manufacturing business, plastic vehicle tank manufacturing business, and that business supplies most of our competitors in the firefighting vehicle industry in the UK and Europe. So we looked at it and said, what better way to go about this than to actually, own the company that supplies our competitors, to put it as straightforwardly as possible. There's also a distribution business in there with even retail stores throughout the UK. So it manufactures at the factory and then supplies its own stores throughout the UK. And then it's also got another manufacturing business which supplies a number of customers across Europe. It's got a number of contracts in place for that. So I'd love to be able to say more, but I think if you put the pieces of that together, it's hugely important for us as a business. It adds pretty substantial revenue. I mean, the exchange rates in the UK is also very strong. So in US dollar terms, it's pretty significant, very significant actually. And yeah, very excited about that. But you know how it is in this business, wake up at the weekend and over to the US, and then there's new things to be excited about already whilst I get the rest of the team to clean up my mess.
No, there's always something exciting going on in the mergers and acquisition world, that's for sure.
Sure.
Something we've not spoken about for a little while. Can you provide an update on the drone front? How is the research going on the payload end that was previously mentioned as well?
Yeah, the company that we've been doing the testing with of the drones has successfully tested the carrying of pretty heavy payloads, more so than what we would need in terms of water tank capacity and our own equipment that would go onto those drones. Remember, we spoke previously about two forms of drones. So there was the firefighting drone with pretty large scale firefighting capacity, could actually carry up to a ton of weight. So that's the testing I'm referring to. That's gone pretty well. Well, it's gone really well. It's passed. Everything's passed in terms of the range of the drone and all of that, stability, conditions, all of that kind of thing. Then the smaller drones, that's more for the aerial surveillance and things like that. And that's something we've been working with Millennium with. Incidentally, we've been not quite on that front. We've been very focused on the autonomous vehicle development because we've actually got some customer-led requirements for that. So that's, the R&D team has been working primarily on that, as well as the fixed system, various things that they've been working on there to get things certified and all of that. So whilst that's been going on, obviously in Europe, the drone testing has been taking place and, as I said, made good progress. So we'll return back to that and start to, apply all of that and get the products together so that we can actually commercialize it and all the rest.
Brilliant. Yeah, I'm really excited about that one. That sounds so innovative. I look forward to hearing more about that. Now, here is a great question to finish on. Is there any truth to the rumours of some sort of Tesla and ILUS collaboration? Can you give us a sign? Maybe make a timeout symbol with your hands and then sip a glass of water. So precise.
Very precise. Yeah, I mean, I don't need to resort to that. I can answer that quite directly. So Tesla is a huge beast of an organization. If we were doing business with Tesla, if we were talking to Tesla, we're not doing business with Tesla yet. But if we were doing business with them, it doesn't mean we know Elon. I don't know Elon. I don't think you know Elon. Claire's is something you're telling me. You had his number all along and you've not shared it with me?
No, afraid not.
I thought he knew each and every one of his 60 million Twitter followers. But no, I don't know him. Nick doesn't know him. We're probably not going to know him anytime soon. It's not to say we wouldn't know him somewhere in the future, but Tesla is a huge company. Those who know what's going on with Tesla vehicles, there might be many, even shareholders that drive them. There might be many who've considered buying them. And obviously one of the issues that they face is around the safety of those vehicles in the event of a fire. So much so that if you go to the Tesla website, one of the first things you'll find is a emergency responders guide as to how to deal with those vehicles in the event of a fire. So it is a significant problem that they face, and we have technology that points right at, being a solution to that. I could speak more about that separately if people want to know more. If you don't know necessarily about what we have technology-wise in terms of combating battery compartment fires with our water mist technology and all of that, I could go on for hours on that front alone. There's probably been a long Q&A video already for some. I'm sure we'll get some comments about that. Why was it so long? Well, you asked us a Tesla question, and we can talk about it for ages. The other thing is they've, as I said, it's a big beast of a company. So energy storage compartments, which they have all over the world, they have a significant issue with those catching fire, specifically in hot, dry, dusty conditions. And then the fire brigades turn up and they literally cannot extinguish those fires. There was one recently in Australia which ran for over a week and cost over $150,000 to extinguish. So, and that was just one of their energy storage compartments that caught fire. I mean, heck, there was hundreds, if not thousands of those storage compartments. If they all went, who knows what that would be, or what that would turn out like. So even in speaking to the likes of the New York Fire Department, when I was with them, I had dinner with some of those guys. Great bunch of guys, by the way. Chatting to them, they were talking about the electric vehicle fires, the issues that they're facing there, and also not, digressing slightly, but the electric bike fires that they have. The people take these electric bikes and these electric scooters up to their apartments. They then catch fire because it's very dry conditions, warm conditions. Those things then catch fire, and then you've got an apartment fire with a battery which has all that thermal runoff and just runs and runs and runs. So it's a significant issue that fire brigades face, and they don't really have a solution to it currently. Likewise, Tesla faces that exact problem, and our technology, water mist technology, is the perfect answer to the issues that they face. Back to the question, since I've digressed so much, and I'm sure I'll be shouted at for that. Yes, there are some discussions taking place within divisions of Tesla. Does Elon know about them? I can guarantee you he doesn't. I'm very sorry to disappoint you. Does it mean big things for the future? Possibly, yes. With our aggressive sales strategy and the way we go about things, I would say certainly yes. But that's really about as much as I can say.
Thanks, JP. If that doesn't excite people, I don't know what will. We did have a couple of technical questions, but we're going to do that on a separate Q&A, aren't we? Because there's quite a few and they'll be quite detailed in the answers. So just wanted to wrap up now by saying thank you all so much for all of your questions. The Discord, you were really on form. Thank you for challenging us and giving us some direct ones to answer there. And I'm sure we'll be seeing you next month or at the latest January face-to-face very soon.
Yeah, thanks very much, Claire. Thanks for organizing this and for listening to me talk for a rather long period of time. Must be sick of it. But anyway, again, thanks to all the long-term shareholders for your continued support. We're well aware of it, and we really appreciate you guys. Thanks to Rich, as always, for organizing these questions. Really appreciate you, man. You're a great guy, a real legend. So thanks, Rich, and thanks to the Discord and the mods and all of that. Shout out to you guys. Happy to do more of these Q&As, and hopefully everyone's found this information useful and beneficial to them, and we'll continue grafting away, putting in those hours and doing what we do best, and growing ILUS. So and look forward to meeting as many of you as possible quite soon.
Yep, we'll see you all soon. Bye.
Bye.